Ariam, and this is my wrap-up of April 2025. These are all the books I read in April. So I have a lot of books here that I did reading vlogs for. So for those, I'm just going to do yes, maybe no. Yes, if I recommend them. Maybe if I recommend them, and maybe to some people. Maybe if you're really into this genre or author, and no for if I don't recommend them. And in the beginning of the month, I read a lot of picture books. So the first book I read was Daydreamers, A Journey of Imagination, written and illustrated by Emily Winfield Martin. And this is basically just a book about how imagination is so cool and awesome, and it's very prettily illustrated. However, I had a problem with the illustrations. I thought the writing was okay, and I thought the illustrations were beautiful, but there were many different kids illustrated in this book. Okay, because this book doesn't have a plot, it's just like, imagination is so awesome, these are all the ways you can use it. Every single kid, as far as I can tell, was white. And I just feel that that's a hugely missed opportunity when you're writing about imagination to make all the kids white. I have a bunch of picture books that are part of a reading blog with reading books with the word river in the title. So the first is I Talk Like a River by Jordan Scott and Sydney Smith. Do I recommend this? Maybe. Beautiful illustrations. You know what? Yes, I recommend this. Next one, River of Dust, the life-giving link between the North Africa and the Amazon by Jill Ann Hoffman. And Jenny M. Mello. This is maybe. This is a maybe. Next I read Return to the Yukon River by Sarah Florence Davidson and Robert Davidson, and illustrated by Janine Gibbons. No, it's not bad, but I don't think it's particularly special, so I'm not going to recommend it even as maybe. Next one I read was Treaty Words. This is a picture book for adults, by the way. Treaty Words, For as Long as the Rivers Flow by Amy Craft and illustrated by Luke Switson. And this is an absolutely yes, 100%. Everyone should read this book. Then I read The Day the River Caught Fire, How the Cuyahoga River exploded and ignited the Earth Day movement. This is by Barry Wittenstein and illustrated by Jesse Harland. Yeah, I recommend it. Then, lastly for that blog, I read River Mariposas, written and illustrated by Morel Ortega, and yes, I recommend this. Next, I read The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. This is hard to summarize because it's the last book in a duology, but the duology is a sequel series to the Fae of Elfheim, or whatever she called it, series. But basically, in this book, we have a guy who's in trouble because of a woman who he loves, and that's all I can tell you. Was this my favorite Holly Black book ever? Absolutely not. I much prefer her Curse Breaker series. Was this my favorite book in this world? No. Did I still enjoy it? Am I glad I read it? Yeah. Okay. Next, I read Heracles by Euripides and translated and annotated and introduced by Michael R. Halloran. This play is so interesting. I really like the introduction. I love the introduction. I thought it really added to the play. The notes did not tell me a lot of things I did not know, but the introduction did. And so basically, I did not know this, but apparently in the myth of Heracles, he goes crazy at one point because of Hera, obviously. And he murders his wife and children, believing that they are his enemies. And I thought that it was really well done. Like, I the introduction does mention that the play is kind of drastic in its change. We start up with this triumphant return of Heracles rescuing his wife and children are in danger, and then Hera comes along and poisons his mind, and obviously he murders his wife and children. But I thought that actually the way that that was set up was actually really good because it just drives in more how horrifying what has happened and how horrifying it is specifically for Heracles, who loves his wife and children and would never do anything to hurt them. This play, almost on the level of Macbeth. Seriously. Okay. The next book I read was Cyber Mage by Saad Hossein. So this is part of his series that takes place, the sci-fi fantasy series. And in this one, which I do think you need to read after Gin City, even though some people, lots of places say you don't, but I do think that it doesn't make a lot of things that happen in here would not make sense without reading Gin City. But in this one, it happens sometime in the near future, and we are following. Oh, I forgot, I did a reading blog for this one. I do not need to tell you what this is all about. Do I recommend it? Yes. Okay, next one. Magic's Price by Mercedes LeKay. Also did a reading blog for this. Do I recommend this one? No. Not unless you're like me and you really, really needed to read it to understand what happens next, but yeah. Okay, next, I read Shopaholic and Baby by Sophie Kinsella. Did a reading blog for this one. Do I recommend it? Maybe. I think that if you like The Devil Wears Prada, you probably like this. Next, I read Spear by Nicola Griffith. This is a novella that follows Percival from the Knights of the Round Table, except Percival is a girl. And she basically puts together a few myths, a motel of Percival's background. This is basically, and also adds in the quest for the Holy Grail. This is basically how Percival became part of the Knights of the Round Table. I thought this one was okay, but I felt really distant from our main character. Like, she never really let us get close to him, or actually to her in this case, even though she does dress up as a boy for a lot of the time. So I never really cared, especially because this is a shorter book, and because we never get closer to our character, I just never really cared, so yeah. Okay, next I read Noteworthy by Riley Redgate. Have this in a reading blog. Do I recommend this? Yes, 100 times yes. Please, please read it. Okay. Next I read Shadow of the Shark by Mary Pope Osborne. And this is part of Magic Treehouse book where we have our siblings Jack and Annie who find a Magic Treehouse and discover that you can, if you point in a book at a picture, it will take you to that time and place. So they have this magic friend, and they're like, you did so much for us, in this book, and we want to send you on vacation. So they asked to go to Corazon in Mexico, and they accidentally point to the wrong picture and end up in Aztec time. I don't like. I like this book in that it was fun to read, and I had a fun time reading it. I don't like this book and everything else. Basically, this book ends with Jack and Annie setting up this very famous Aztec queen, who I forgot her name, but she was a real historical Aztec queen, and basically ends with Jack and Annie setting her up to be queen. We don't know why she was queen, but it definitely was not kids from the future from Pennsylvania. Okay? And I don't like and I know we don't know the historical realities, but I really, really hate it that even if we don't know what happened, we should not make up what happened. If we know what happened and you want to play around with it, that's something else. But you don't know what happened and making something else totally up, no, that's a no from me. So yeah, don't recommend that one. Okay. Now the last two books I read in April where No One Will Come Back for Us and Other Stories by Permi Muhammad, which is a collection of short stories by an author that I really like, a novella by her. Unfortunately, I did not like this one as much, and so I do not recommend it. It is a reading vlog. And the last one is not in a reading vlog, and this is A Natural History of Dragons, which is part of the Memoirs of Lady Trent series by Marie Brennan. I did like this one. I'd say if I had to rate it, it would be 4 stars. So it did take me. So this follows our main character, who is not yet Lady Trent. Her name is Isabella. And that is weird for reasons that I will explain in a moment. And she is growing up she's a young woman in the 1830s, I'd say, and she's obsessed with dragons. And she and her husband go on this expedition to Vistrana, which is, there are made up countries in here, but it's basically in like Russia or Ukraine of today, and to find dragons. And then there's this whole conspiracy plot. Wait one moment, my cat wants to come in. Kit Kat! After they got to Bistrana, I enjoyed that part. And to be fair, it doesn't take forever to get to it, but it does take 20% of the book. Around-ish. I was listening to it on audiobook, and I was not invested. I was really just not invested when they weren't in Bistrana having adventures. However, I do not think that will continue to happen in the next books, because a lot of the first book was setting up who she is as a person. It's her memoir, so it starts basically when she's a child, and then up to her marrying her husband. Excuse me. And then they go to Vistrana. Now, something I found very interesting in this book is the religion of Europe is Judaism. The culture is not Jewish. That's what I found extremely interesting. The religion is Judaism. She does not put this in ways that I think non-Jews would be able to recognize it. I read this as, while I didn't vlog it because it was not part of my classes for Orilium, I did read this as the guild book for Orilium, which is kind of like a book club kind of thing. Anyways, and I was the only one to have mentioned this. Very likely I'm the only Jew there. And so it isn't put in a way that non-Jews could recognize. It is put in a way that Jews could recognize, and it is very well researched. But what I'm saying I found super interesting, and I think it's something that only a non-Jew could write, because there's no Jewish culture. The culture is fully European. And if you understand anything, and if you know anything about Jewish history in Europe, you would understand why that would not really match up with Jewish culture. So I just found it super interesting that the religion is Judaism and the culture is not. And that's why I said it was weird that she's named Isabella, because as a Jew, I know there are Jews named Isabella, but as a Jew, when I think of Isabella, I think Isabella of Castile, who was the queen who was in charge of the Inquisition and expulsion of the Jews from Spain, and Isabel from the Tanakh, who was also a horrible person. But anyways, those are all the books I read in April of 2025. Thank you for watching. I hate this new computer I have. It's not the computer's fault. It's the Windows 11 fault. Windows 11 is so bad. I don't know why they have to update everything to make it worse. Anyways, mini rant over. So I realized last night that I forgot to also say the book I DNF'd. And there was one book that I forgot to say that I DNF'd for March, because in March I DNF'd so many books, and this month, April, luckily I did DNF'd only one. So in March, the other book I DNF'd was Albel of Akot Meshel Malon, Vakadosh Baruch Hu. I don't remember who it's by. I do remember that she learned in a place in Tel Aviv to write, and that I will never recommend anyone to go there because her writing was terrible. Now, I know what she was trying to do, okay? I realized what she was trying to do. She was trying to do a certain style so it would be kind of, she was trying to do stream of consciousness. It did not work for me. I can see why some people wouldn't mind it. There were a lot of reviews that were like, the writing wasn't good, I was able to get past it. But because it was so fragmented, for me, like, I'm also generally like, oh, the writing isn't that good, but I can get past it. But it was so fragmented. I really, really hate fragmented. There are some choice, most of the time that I can't get past bad writing is because it's literally impossible for me to read or extremely difficult for me to read. But I hate fragmented because then you're pausing, you're constantly pausing. You're reading like this, pause, pause, pause. I'm not even joking. There were tons of sentences that were only one word long. And also I read 6 pages, and 2 of those pages, a full third of the book, at least, it might have even been half, it might have even been 3 pages, were just descriptions of men. So I didn't like it. But I can see why other people were able to push past the bad writing. Now, the book I DNF'd in April, which I read 370 pages of this, is Fall of Giants by Kenneth Follett. And what do I say about this? So, Kenneth Follett, he wanted to write a textbook about World War I, and he wanted to write erotica. Apparently his publisher wouldn't let him write both of those, so he put them together in one book. I read 370 pages of this. Keep on thinking, like, it will get better, it will get better. Because I didn't really mind the textbook aspects as much, but I got to a line at, like, page 371, where it was like, she had perky breasts and repressed sexuality, and I was like, I'm done. So yeah, I also really hated that book. Well, which is why I DNF'd it, I guess. But on happy note, that is the end of my April wrap-up.